I never thought I'd be telling this story, but here I am. Jordan Wells, sitting in a sleek Manhattan apartment that once felt impossibly out of reach, about to share how I lost everything I built, and then took it all back in a way no one saw coming. It started 4 years ago, back in 2021. I was 26, fresh out of NYU with a master's degree in cybersecurity, determined to prove myself in a male-dominated industry that rarely took women seriously unless they made themselves impossible to ignore. I landed a job at Titan Core Technologies, a mid-tier software company based in Brooklyn. They built secure frameworks for enterprise clients, not revolutionary, just routine. But I didn't come to play it safe. The CEO, Cameron Rhodes, was what you'd call a polished opportunist. He hadn't touched code in years, but somehow managed to stay in the spotlight whenever someone else had a breakthrough. People warned me. I didn't listen. I was too focused on proving my worth. "Don't overthink it, Wells," he'd say, dismissing my more ambitious contributions. "Just make it work." But I wasn't there to just make it work. I had a vision. So after hours, I stayed late in my tiny corner office, running on cold coffee and louder thoughts. I was building something bigger than Titan Core ever imagined. A cybersecurity AI that could do more than react. It could predict. I called it Sentinel. Where traditional systems flagged threats after they appeared, Sentinel identified them before they were launched. It studied human patterns, not just code. It learned behaviors, recognized digital footprints, and detected intent. It didn't just stop attacks, it anticipated them. The breakthrough came one night just before 2 a.m., and I remember it clearly because I cried when the model stabilized. Not out of frustration this time, but pure relief. "Still here, Miss Wells?" Louise, the overnight security guard, would ask kindly. "Just working on something of my own," I'd reply, always minimizing the screen. Because in tech, silence is safer. I'd watched too many young developers, especially women, have their work absorbed by upper management, their ideas suddenly rebranded under someone else's name, their names vanished, their brilliance dimmed. So I guarded Sentinel like a secret, paid for my own servers, used isolated systems, never let it touch Titan Core's mainframe, just monitored traffic to test its predictive models. Then one day I slipped. During a strategy meeting, I demoed a tiny part of my concept, not Sentinel itself, just the surface-level framework, a conversation starter. Cameron's eyes lit up like a man who'd struck gold. This is what our clients need," he said. 2 months later, without a single mention of my name, Sentinel, or a poorly repackaged version of it, was being unveiled at a high-profile investor launch. And I wasn't even on the guest list. But what Cameron didn't know was that I had already filed for a patent. 6 months earlier, I had set up an LLC in my name and locked Sentinel's core engine behind legal protections. Even the code he accessed was watermarked, authenticated, traceable. The night of the launch party, just before his demo was set to go live, the screens froze. Then a message appeared across every display. "Unauthorized use detected, property of Wells Technologies." The silence in that ballroom must have been deafening. By the next morning, Cameron wasn't trending for his big reveal. I was. Every attempted breach, every suspicious login, every single anomaly, Sentinel caught them all, silently, flawlessly, without ever tripping an alert. I documented everything. Version histories, logs, time-stamped backups across 3 separate encrypted drives. I wasn't just building innovation, I was building evidence. Because in this industry, having a brilliant idea wasn't enough. You had to be ready to defend it. Then came the moment that shifted everything. It was January 2022, and I had finally completed Sentinel's core engine, not the beta, not a simulation, the real architecture. And it worked better than I ever imagined. External validation from 2 cybersecurity consultants confirmed what I already suspected. Sentinel could stop 99.9% of cyber threats before they launched. The remaining 0.1%, it neutralized them in less than a second. It was a turning point. I knew I couldn't hide it forever. So I booked a meeting with Cameron Rhodes. Yes, he was manipulative. Yes, I had my doubts. But he was still my CEO, and a small part of me hoped he'd see Sentinel for what it was and help take it to the world the right way. Thursday morning, 9:30 a.m. EM. I walked into the boardroom with my laptop, reports, security test results, everything he'd need to understand what Sentinel truly was. Cameron leaned back in his leather chair as I ran the demo. His face gave nothing away. When I finished, there was a long silence. "This is interesting," he said finally. "How long have you been developing this?" "Almost 2 years," I said, "but not on company time. It's all on my own hardware, off the grid. I can show you everything, logs, timestamps, independent verifications." He raised his hand, cutting me off. "Send it over, the full documentation, code base. I need to review this properly." There was something strange in his tone, something I should have caught, but I was too swept up in the hope, the pride, the idea that maybe, finally, someone was listening. I stayed late that night answering his questions. Implementation details, scalability, pricing models, he asked it all, and I answered, holding nothing back. I went home feeling like I was standing on the edge of a breakthrough. The next morning, everything fell apart. I walked into the office and tried to log in. Access denied. At first I thought it was a tech glitch. I tried again. Same message. Then my phone buzzed. An email from HR. "Please report to the 14th floor conference room immediately." I didn't panic, not yet. I grabbed my bag and walked through the office, coworkers glancing up from their desks, their expressions puzzled. In the conference room, Cameron was already seated with Susan from HR and 2 uniformed security guards. A thick folder lay on the table. "Jordan," Cameron began, not even offering me a seat. "We've completed an internal review of your activities." He flipped open the folder. "It appears you violated your employment contract by developing a competing security product using company resources." "What? No, I didn't," I said, stepping forward. "Everything I built was done on my own time, with my own tools. I have the records." "We found source code and related files on your workstation," he continued, ignoring me completely. "I never uploaded anything to Titan Core's network," I said. "If it's on a company machine, you put it there." "We have all we need," Susan cut in. Cameron folded his hands. "You're being terminated for cause. Your severance is revoked. Legal will be in touch." My stomach dropped. It didn't make sense. I'd backed up everything externally. I'd been careful, paranoid even. And yet, somehow, he had copies. That's when it hit me, the questions he asked that night, the way he phrased things. He'd baited me into sending clean files. And now he was using them to frame me. He thought it was over. He was wrong. Jordan's story is far from over, and trust me, you'll want to see what she does next. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the moment she turns the tables. Fragments of code, logs, timestamps. Fabricated to make it look like I'd worked on Sentinel using Titan Core's systems. My hands turned cold as I stared at the folder Susan slid across the table. "This is your termination notice," she said softly, almost apologetically, "and a reminder that your non-compete agreement bars you from working in cybersecurity for the next 18 months. I shook my head. "That contract doesn't apply. Sentinel was built independently. I have receipts, timestamps, a full paper trail." Cameron cut in with that smug smirk of his. "I can, and I have, Ms. Wells. You're just a junior developer. Did you really think a project like this could belong to you?" He turned to the guards. "Escort her out. She won't be needing anything from her desk. It's all company property." I should have felt anger, panic, but instead something strange washed over me. Clarity. Because what Cameron didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that Sentinel had one final protocol buried deep in its neural code. A self-defense feature I'd added months ago, just in case someone ever tried to steal it. A silent failsafe set to activate 30 days after any unauthorized modification attempt to its core framework. And knowing Cameron, he'd never be able to resist tinkering with it, putting his name on my work. I gathered my few personal belongings under the wary eyes of security, said nothing, and walked out with my head high. Just as I reached the front lobby, I heard Cameron on the phone. "Yeah, we're announcing it next month, the most advanced AI defense system ever built." He paused, chuckled. "Yes, my team's been developing it in secret." I didn't look back. I didn't have to. 30 days. Titan Core was throwing a massive launch party in 30 days. Every major outlet in tech, every investor, every VC firm. It was going to be one hell of a show, but not the kind Cameron was expecting. The first week was the hardest, not because I'd lost my job. I had savings. I had options. No, it was watching them erase me, scrub my name from my own creation like I was nothing. They announced Sentinel as a proprietary Titan Core system. Cameron gave interviews praising his dedicated internal R&D team. I wasn't surprised, just disappointed. Through old classmates, tech forums, and quiet contacts, I learned that Titan Core had reassigned a team of engineers to optimize Sentinel, but in truth, they were fumbling in the dark, tweaking code they didn't fully understand. Exactly as I predicted. Meanwhile, my one-bedroom apartment in the Lower East Side transformed into my command center. 3 monitors lined my desk. One streamed industry news. One tracked internal dev activity Titan Core unintentionally broadcast through unsecured channels. The last one? It showed Sentinel's hidden diagnostic pings. I hadn't accessed its core directly. My protocol ensured I wouldn't need to. Sentinel was sending me signals, confirming what I already knew. They were tampering with the wrong parts of the system, breaking things they couldn't fix. And as the days ticked by, closer and closer to the launch event, those pings got louder, more urgent. Cameron thought he'd buried me, but he'd only planted the seed. This wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. You see, while Cameron thought he had full access to Sentinel, he only had what I'd let him see. What I'd shown in that boardroom was a shadow version, a sandboxed model with limited functions. The real Sentinel? That was mine. Fully encrypted, self-aware, far more advanced than anything they were tinkering with. "They're butchering your code," Marcus said during one of our encrypted calls. He was an old college friend, now a back-end engineer at Titan Core, one of the few I still trusted. Cameron's got them working 16-hour days, renaming functions, restructuring libraries, trying to erase any trace of you from the final product. I leaned back, watching my diagnostics dashboard. "Let them try," I said. "Every line they alter sends me another breadcrumb." Each edit they made triggered a silent ping from Sentinel's embedded failsafe. It was logging everything, every mistake, every deviation, and more importantly, it was adapting, just like I'd trained it to. "But be careful," I added. "If they trace you—" "They won't. I'm not stupid, Jordan," he replied with a small laugh. "But thanks." Marcus wasn't my only ally. 3 days after my termination, I received a message on Proton Mail. It was Sarah Lynn, a compliance officer from Titan Core's legal team. "What they did to you wasn't just wrong, it might be illegal. I reviewed the file metadata on the evidence they used. The timestamps were created after your demo to Cameron. I've made copies. Quietly, I'll keep you updated." I thanked her and urged caution. Sarah was walking a dangerous line. But the more I pieced together, the clearer it became. This wasn't just betrayal, it was theft. 2 weeks after I was pushed out, the tech press caught wind of Titan Core's upcoming launch. The headlines were predictable. Titan Core to reveal groundbreaking cybersecurity AI. CEO Cameron Rhodes claims breakthrough in predictive defense. If I wasn't so furious, I might have laughed. The same man who told me not to overcomplicate things was now claiming to have built an AI system using entirely in-house innovation. Back in my apartment, Sentinel monitored everything. Each change they made to the code only strengthened its immune response. It was like watching a digital organism evolve in real time, recognizing threats, reconfiguring, preparing. "He's throwing a massive party," Marcus informed me a few days later. "Full media rollout, TechCrunch, Wired, investors, even a few reps from government security agencies." Of course he was. Sentinel had the power to transform not just cybersecurity but military defense, financial systems, even healthcare. That's why I designed it with tight restrictions, ethical protocols that prevented offensive use or weaponization. They were buried deep, embedded in the core logic, no override. I doubted Cameron had noticed. 3 weeks after my firing, my inbox pinged with a message that made my eyebrows rise. Subject: Let's talk. From Cameron Rhodes. Jordan, I hope you're well. After further consideration, I believe we may have acted a bit hastily. I'd like to propose a consulting opportunity. Your insights could be helpful ahead of the launch. Let's talk soon. Warmly, Cameron. I almost applauded his nerve. He was cracking. Sentinel wasn't responding the way he expected. There were small bugs now, slow interface responses, cryptic log messages. Harmless on the surface, but enough to rattle someone taking credit for a system they didn't understand. And just beneath the surface, Sentinel was still watching, waiting, because what Cameron didn't know was that the launch party wasn't going to introduce his greatest achievement. It was going to expose his greatest lie. I didn't reply. 3 days later, a second email arrived, this time offering a 6-figure settlement, plus a consulting contract and a non-disclosure agreement. They even dangled a potential path back into the company if I'd play nice. Again, I didn't reply. Silence, I'd learned, was more powerful than any rebuttal, and Cameron's desperation confirmed what I already knew. They couldn't control Sentinel. Not fully. Not anymore. He's spiraling, Marcus messaged me. Weekend shifts, daily check-ins. They're trying to fix bugs they don't understand. I glance at the countdown timer in the corner of my screen. 5 days until launch. Every night, I monitored Sentinel's diagnostics. Each code patch they forced into the system made things worse. It wasn't malfunctioning. It was resisting. Quietly. Reinforcing its mission. Protect truth. Expose deception. Reveal corruption. Sarah reached out again. She'd secured more evidence. Backdated development logs, altered timestamps, and even email drafts Cameron had written to suggest he'd initiated the Sentinel project years ago. I've encrypted and stored them off-site, she wrote. If anything happens, they'll surface. I thanked her, reminded her to stay under the radar. Cameron was cornered, and that made him dangerous. The final 72 hours were the hardest. Not because I was scared, but because I was ready. I knew what was coming, and watching him parade my work, boast about his team's genius, it gnawed at me. But I held back. He was too arrogant to realize how close he was to detonation. The night before the launch, one last email arrived in my inbox. Subject line, final offer. This time the number had doubled, mid-7 figures. Along with a new clause, if I refused, Cameron's legal team would ensure I'd never work in cybersecurity again. My reply was short. Looking forward to tomorrow's presentation. That night, I walked the length of my apartment, eyes sweeping over the displays one last time. Sentinel was calm, quiet, fully primed. The protocol was synced to launch at 2:30 p.m. sharp, exactly when Cameron would step on stage for the demo. What he thought was a keynote unveiling was actually an activation sequence. I went to bed feeling strangely at peace. Tomorrow would either clear my name and expose the truth, or end everything I'd worked for. There was no middle ground. As I was drifting off to sleep, my phone buzzed one last time. Marcus! Everything's in place. You should see Blake's face when it hits. Tomorrow's going to be historic. The day of the launch dawned crisp and clear over Manhattan. I sat at my desk, coffee in hand, as the Titan Core livestream went live. The venue was massive. Polished marble floors, chrome podiums, and floor-to-ceiling LED screens lit up with Sentinel's redesigned logo, a cheap, corporate version of what I'd once sketched in the margins of a notebook. I didn't feel bitter, just focused. Industry leaders filled every row, investors, tech CEOs, press from Wired and The Verge, even a few reps from government cybersecurity agencies were in attendance. Titan Core had spared no expense. Cameron walked on stage, beaming with pride. He launched into his speech, reeling off buzzwords like proprietary, innovative, game-changing. He had no idea that the system behind him was counting down, not to a product launch, but to a reckoning. And at 2:30 p.m. on the dot, Sentinel would take over. Not with chaos, Not with destruction, but with truth. Champagne flowed like a river, and Titan Core's PR team worked the crowd like seasoned performers. Polished, smiling assistants ushered journalists to their seats with branded folders and neatly packaged press kits. Marcus had set up a secure multicam feed for me. On one screen, I saw a wide-angle view of the main conference hall, sleek lighting, towering displays, and Sentinel's new logo beaming from every wall. Another feed gave me a close-up of Cameron Rhodes, pacing the stage in a tailored navy suit that probably cost more than my first apartment. He moved like a man who believed the world belonged to him, shaking hands with investors, laughing with military contractors, nodding respectfully to SEC regulators seated in the front row. At 2:15 p.m. sharp, he stepped behind the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, the mic carrying his voice with rehearsed authority, "today, Titan Core redefines the future of cybersecurity." I glanced at my monitors. Sentinel's hidden protocol was online, warming up as it scanned for core tampering, unauthorized access, and structural changes. 15 minutes. "For the past 3 years," Cameron continued, "my team and I have worked tirelessly to build something unprecedented, an AI security system that doesn't just respond to threats, it anticipates them." On the LED screens behind him, Sentinel's redesigned interface shimmered into view. I had to admit, they made it look good. But appearances were skin-deep. 10 minutes. "Allow me to demonstrate Sentinel's adaptive threat response," Cameron said, walking confidently to the terminal. "We've prepared a real-time simulated cyber attack." My phone buzzed. "Sarah." Board members confirmed. "Military contractors in front row. SEC agents here. Full house." "Perfect." Cameron initiated the simulation and, just as expected, Sentinel responded with smooth precision. Quarantining files, rerouting traffic, isolating malware. The crowd murmured their approval. Polite claps, raised eyebrows. "Of course it worked. I built it, too." 5 minutes. "And now," Cameron said, gesturing proudly, "you'll see Sentinel's true innovation, its ability to learn and adapt in real time." He launched a second wave of mock threats. That's when it happened. A small window appeared in the corner of the terminal. "System alert. Core integrity scan. Engaged." He tried to ignore it, minimizing the window with a practiced flick of the mouse. But Sentinel was waking up. 2:30 p.m. The lights dimmed, the screens flickered, code cascaded across them like falling rain. Cameron looked back nervously. "Apologies, minor technical issue." "Unauthorized modifications detected." Sentinel's voice echoed through the hall, calm and steady. My own voice, digitally processed, years younger but unmistakably mine. "Initiating system verification protocol." Cameron's face drained of color. He frantically typed commands. "Access denied." "Jordan," Marcus whispered into my earpiece, breathless, "this is wild. You're trending already." On screen, Sentinel's diagnostics went public. File names. Version logs. User IDs. G. Wells, original developer. Rhodes, unauthorized access. The crowd began murmuring, confused at first, then louder as screenshots and data appeared live across the screens. "Identity verification required," Sentinel continued. Cross-referencing source code signatures. Displaying origin logs. Cameron lunged toward the podium mic. There's been a misunderstanding. This was a collaborative effort." Sentinel cut him off. "False claim detected." The room went silent. On the screens, my name appeared in bold. System developer, Jordan Wells. Every timestamp, every line of code, every backdated document was exposed. "And Cameron?" He froze. The massive screens shifted. Line after line of source code appeared. On one side, the clean, efficient architecture I had written. On the other, the clumsy, overwritten mess Titan Core's engineers had scrambled to pass off as their own. Commit histories populated the displays in real time. Timestamps, metadata, my username, my fingerprints. There was no denying it now. "Primary developer identified, Jordan Wells," Sentinel announced, calm and absolute. Current system compromised by unauthorized modifications initiated by Cameron Rhodes. Gasps rippled through the room like a wave. Cameron frantically typed at his console, trying to override the system. It was too late. Displaying evidence of intellectual property theft. Then came the real strike. The screens began cycling through the very documents Sarah had gathered. Forged development logs. Files with backdated metadata. Copies of my original code altered to hide its source. Emails Cameron thought he'd deleted. Settlement offers. NDA drafts. Each one more damning than the last. Ladies and gentlemen, Sentinel continued, this system was designed with a single core directive to protect truth and expose deception. I stared at the live feed, my heart pounding but my expression calm. The room was dissolving into chaos. The current demonstration has been compromised by systematic intellectual property theft. I watched military contractors begin to rise and leave, their interest in the product clearly dead. Board members pulled together in tight clusters, gesturing urgently. Journalists snapped photos and hammered out tweets. The entire launch event, streamed live to thousands, was unraveling. Cameron snapped. This is outrageous, he barked, red-faced. It's sabotage. A bitter ex-employee. Accessing original development servers, Sentinel interrupted. The screens cut to video footage, grainy security cam footage from Titan Core's offices. There I was, huddled over my desk at midnight, debugging Sentinel line by line. Next came security access logs, time-stamped to the minute, showing months of after-hours work. On my own time, using my own equipment. Then came the final blow. A detailed changelog of every modification Cameron had made, each one triggering Sentinel's protocol. The more he tried to obscure my work, the more evidence he had unknowingly created. System integrity compromised, Sentinel declared, initiating emergency protocols. The screens went black. Then, after a few seconds, one final message appeared in bold white letters. Sentinel AI Security System. Created by Jordan Wells. Patent pending. The room exploded. I saw Cameron stagger back from the podium as two stern-faced board members approached him. Behind them, I spotted SEC officials already pulling out notepads and phones. They hadn't just come to watch. They had come to investigate. My phone buzzed. Marcus. Are you seeing this? Blake looks like he's about to faint. I was seeing it. 3 years of work, months of silence, weeks of building the trap, and now it had sprung, live, before an entire industry. But I wasn't done yet. I stood from my desk, smoothed my blazer, and slipped on my coat. The storm had started. And now it was time to step out of the shadows and claim what had always been mine. Time for Phase 2. 20 minutes later, I walked into the Titan Core Conference Center, where the launch party had officially collapsed into a full-scale crisis management scramble. Executives were shouting over one another. PR managers were trying, and failing, to regain control, and Cameron Rhodes stood cornered by furious board members and stone-faced attorneys. "Miss Wells," a voice called out from the other end of the hall. I turned to see Linda Chin, the sharp-eyed, no-nonsense CEO of Veridian Secure, the largest cybersecurity firm on the West Coast. She extended her hand. "I believe we need to talk about Sentinel's real capabilities." We found a quiet room away from the chaos. For the next 2 hours, I gave her a full demonstration, not just of Sentinel's security features, but of its ethical safeguards, its adaptive neural learning, and its ability to evolve without sacrificing core integrity. She understood the implications immediately. Meanwhile, I received a text from Marcus. "Cameron's been escorted out. Security walked him straight past a line of reporters. His badge is deactivated." That same evening, Titan Core's board convened an emergency session. By the time the lights dimmed, they'd offered me full legal ownership of Sentinel's patents, a large settlement for the attempted theft, and a CTO position with a 7-figure salary. But I turned it all down. Linda's offer was better. A new division under Veridian Secure, built from the ground up around Sentinel, with me leading it, complete autonomy, partnership stake, creative and ethical control. She didn't just want to use Sentinel, she wanted to protect what it stood for. 1 year later, Sentinel is the global standard in AI security, defending governments, corporations, and nonprofits alike, not just from external threats, but from the inside out. Its core protocol, to protect truth and expose deception, remains untouched. Cameron, last I heard, he's facing multiple lawsuits and an SEC investigation. Turns out Sentinel wasn't the only project he'd stolen over the years. And me? Some nights, as I sit in my glass-walled corner office overlooking downtown Manhattan, I think about that launch day. I remember the panic in his eyes, the disbelief on his face when the system turned against him. He thought he was stealing code. What he really triggered was the most advanced truth detection protocol ever built. The irony, if he'd just been honest, if he treated me with respect, I would have welcomed his help. But he chose greed. He chose deception. And in doing so, he armed my creation against himself. Today, companies don't just use Sentinel to protect their data. They use it to hold themselves accountable, to prevent fraud, to track internal abuse, to stop theft before it starts. Every time it catches someone trying to take credit for another person's work, I smile. Because sometimes, security isn't just about protecting networks. Sometimes it's about protecting truth. And sometimes, the quiet developer in the back corner isn't just writing code. They're writing justice. If you've made it to the end of my story, thank you, truly. This wasn't just about stolen code or corporate sabotage. This was about standing up when someone tried to erase me, about refusing to let silence define my worth. If anything in my journey spoke to you, I'd love to hear it. Drop a comment below, share your thoughts, your experiences, or even just a word of support. Believe me, I read them all. And if you've ever been underestimated, dismissed, or had your work taken for granted, I want you to know you are not alone. Your voice matters. Your work matters. You matter. Here's what I've learned. You don't have to yell to be powerful. You don't have to play their games to win. Sometimes, the most revolutionary thing you can do is quietly build something they can't take from you and let the truth speak for itself. So whether you're coding in a corner, painting in a basement, or chasing a dream no one else sees yet, don't stop. Keep building, keep going, because one day they won't just see what you made, they'll feel what you stood for. And if you want to see more stories like mine of quiet strength, resilience, and well-earned revenge, hit that subscribe button. Join a community that believes in justice, integrity, and the power of staying true to yourself, even when the odds are stacked against you. We're just getting started. Because in a world full of noise, sometimes it's the quiet ones